Right, all right. So week 3 in CIT 85, and I'm recording this video the first Saturday after the start of the semester because my goal is generally to have 2 weeks of content for you to work on. So by doing it today, I will hopefully meet that. And it may not be at the beginning of the week that you'll have two, but by midweek of week 2, then you'll see week 3 roll in. Okay, now I say that because there's a benefit to working ahead, a real benefit. Because if you submit and again my goal every day is to grade. I generally meet it. I think I didn't one day this last week because of my own schedule, but it is definitely my goal. So if you submit something, I see it. I can give you feedback. And here's what's important to understand: if you're submitting work after my due date, even if you fix something, it may not give you a higher grade because if you've submitted after the due date, it then falls into the late category. Okay? So that's an important thing to understand, and the benefit of working ahead and what happens if you work after. Now, the first thing on the schedule is or the topics I want to talk about is kind of related. Like our schedules, and I put big might be different. They probably are based on the times I see many of you submit. I'm up early. I get work done early. I exercise. I do my day. I go to campus. Now, not today, it's Saturday. But also, I don't always work on Saturday. My goal is actually to get this stuff done during the week so I can have my weekend. And I could be traveling, I could be doing other things. But in general, and here's what I'd want you to know: in general, my schedule is Monday through Friday, right? Early in the morning until early evening. And so that's when, after that time or on the weekends, you may not hear back from me in such a timely manner as that I hope you do during the week. Okay? Again, I run Zoom to give you all a way to interact if I'm not around. So they could be different. Now, and that idea of working ahead is you need to have, because I grade generally every morning, in order to get that review, you generally have to be there. That work needs to be there the first thing in the morning before it's due, which could be a challenge for some of you. But it's good to challenge yourself. You're in school. I'm in school. I'm always in school. This is the way life is. Now, the thing about, and I encourage you to come to office hours. They're listed in Simple Syllabus. We have a tutor, Zach. Go see Zach. But if for some reason you come into my office hour and I don't immediately let you in or I message you, just know that for my other classes, I'm doing technical interviews. This is something for my SQL, my JavaScript course. Those students come in for a technical interview to demonstrate their skills. Now, I don't, for this class, I have considered it, but because of the timeline, it just hasn't worked. But it may be something I consider in the future. The reason I'm telling you here is that if you do come in and I'm with somebody, I will message you and then I will connect with you after if for some reason we don't get to talk during that hour and set up a time to work with you. Because the thing is, I want you to get help if you need it. Remember, and this is kind of what I said already about late work, but also there's late passes. You have 2 of them. I would almost think about not using them at the beginning of the semester, but because when we get to project work, those items have the biggest impact on your grade. You definitely don't want to miss that. So there is a project for this class. You're going to code a responsive website. We'll start talking about that pretty soon, right? The AI reviews. So I've only had one student so far have an issue, and I think we were able to figure out what it was. When you're building software, and maybe you don't know because you've never done it, there's so many things that could come up to prevent a site. And I suspect you've been on a site and it didn't work and you couldn't figure out why. When you think about the layers that have to work correctly, from you behind the keyboard to way out there in cyberspace, over to OpenAI, back, and then to Canvas, I mean, it's actually a miracle in some ways. Anything works, but it does. It's pretty amazing. It doesn't work sometimes. I've seen your feedback, and now at this point, because I didn't talk about this in week 2, the attendance, but here in week 3, our reviews look a little different because of the way I set them up. So, and again, I actually want to thank Christina for helping me redo the prompt for this. I'm still refining it, but I appreciate, because nobody knows this AI stuff. I mean, to think anyone does based on how current it is, nah. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. So those are the class topics I want to go over. Now I'm actually going to dive into how to set you up for week 3, and in that process also show you how you're going to use an image folder going forward in both the private and the public repos. And then I'm going to give you a code challenge, and we'll talk about this in a minute. So what I'm going to do right now, and this is just content showing you what I'm about to do, is I'm going to move over to my VS Code that I have locally. And on my VS Code, I have my private repo open. Okay, now if you're on CodeSpace, you should, you will have a code space for your private. Again, I'll move in a minute talking about the public, and you would want to have also created a code space, again, if you're there. If you're running local, you could just open up that folder. Now, what I've done here is what I believe I showed in week 2, where I just open the repo that I'm working on. It just generally works better, okay? So here in week 2, there's the work that you did, okay? So in this case, we're going to now set up for week 3, but before we actually set up the folder, I'm going to have you create a new folder. And I just clicked on README for a reason I'll show you in a minute. But in this case, when you remember, and actually I think I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can clearly see it. And by this time, you've gotten some experience here. Here's your create a folder, and here's your create a file. Now, where it creates the folder and file will be based on what you currently have selected. So right now, if I clicked into week 2 and I created a folder, where will that new folder go? Inside of week 2, which is not where you want it this week. You want to create a folder at the same level as your week 2. And we're actually going to end up creating 2 folders, and I'll show you why. So if I click here, then if I hit folder, it actually places it at that right level. Okay, so in here I would do w3_html. Okay, cool. So now I have a new folder, okay, and nothing in it. There's nothing in it. And week 3, right, or week 2, I have all those files. But I'm going to create another new folder, right? And I click up here, and the reason I do that is so that it makes that my current selection. I'm going to type img. And the reason I'm going to do this is for all the work for both the public and the private, you're going to have this image folder off the root of whatever repo you're on. Because when we talk about the root, this is the root. Now this could be different if you have the CIT85SP25 open. But when we're referencing things, we want to assume, because in this case, like for rendering pages, right, that root, and actually I think I'm going to show you rather than talk about it, because I think it'll make more sense. Okay, so let's do this. So now in week 2, I'm going to select this. I'm going to Control C copy. Okay, I could also right click copy. Okay, I'm going to roll this up. I'm going to go down to week 3. I'm now going to paste. Now I got to make sure, and I can see this worked correctly because these are now all untracked files. Okay, so I've already got my live server going. Okay, so you make sure you have yours. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to stop mine because I'm going to show you something that you'll start to see. Again, if you've taken my classes, this is going to be like, Rio, I know this, I get it, repeat sometimes stuff. Okay. So I'm going to hit go live. And now, because I have more than one folder and I'm not in a specific file, I get a listing of all those files in that folder. right? So if I click into week 3, then I see what I copied over, right? And in this case, there was not any, there actually might have been, because this might have been something, matter of fact, I'll go back and look at this. But the only image right now that I see, and I'm going to use for an example, is actually this favicon. And this favicon is an image file. Okay, so now that we have that, right, I'm going to use my Alt tab to go back here. I'm going to look in here and find that, okay, there's that favicon icon, and it's a very small file, by the way, because it's a, now we'll see larger files, and I'll talk about image size in a minute. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this file and I'm going to drag it up to image, okay? Now when I do that, when I drag it like that, it's moving it, okay? Now, having done that, a couple things are going to happen. One is that, and I'm going to go back to my page here. When I refresh, you'll notice that favicon is now gone. Okay, now I could show you an inspect, right, that where it's still looking for it, right, because in this case, it's looking for it in this folder, and it's no longer in that folder, it's up here. So whenever you're doing work from here forward, where you're doing any kind of image work, I'm about to show you in the example of a favicon, but it's true for any image, okay, because you're going to actually create some images this week, how you reference, right? So in this case, we have 3 folders. One we're working out of currently, one we worked out of before, and a new one, but that new one now has just images in it, no HTML, no CSS. So if I come here and I open that index page and I find the reference here, okay, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that favicon, Dave talked to us about, you know, it's a relative, it's an icon. We give it a ref, tells it where to find it. We've now moved it. We know it's no longer working. So how do we tell anytime we want to either reference, you know, give, in the case of an image, it's an SRC, or in the case of this, it's a ref, okay, href, reference. How do we tell it to back up one? And that backup is an important thing. So backup is ... Okay, now notice what VS Code is already trying to do, right? It's already trying to make my life easier, which I appreciate. And it's like, okay, when you ... you're actually then moving, or your references looking at that image folder, which is one folder behind where you're currently at, or you back up one, because they're listed at the same level here in this reference. ... says go back to here, and then from here, now let's just try to see what happens here. Does that fix it? And the answer is not yet, because just going ... what else do I need? And this is where your VS Code, and I'm going to do this again, was actually giving you the image, but I could just type img ... and then it would go, okay, that's the file you want. Now I already have that text in the reference here. Okay, because all this is doing is pointing. The HTML, in this case for the favicon, is pointing there. Okay, if I clicked here, you know, it actually is smart enough to know. Old browsers would have duplicated and had it twice, but this is smart enough to know, oh, you know what, you already have that, so all I'm going to do is just kind of what we call auto sense or autocomplete. So now if I come back over here, that image file is indeed there. Okay? Okay, so what we've done here, right, and I've actually given you, so here's the thing, let's go back to week 3, right, so here's what I walked you through, right, and now what you want to do is do your, and this is something you're going to hear me say, because when you learn the get status, right, get commit, right, so get status, get add, get commit, and then ultimately get push, that is the workflow. We call it the get workflow. So I don't have to every time say that's what you need to do, but I do give commit messages. This is fairly common. Okay. So for this work, you'll need to have done that so that your folder is ready to go. And this will probably be the last time I actually show this, but it's never bad. So I could do get status here, and I would see I have a couple things untracked. I'm going to back up a little bit just in my resolution, right? So I could do get add star, get commit, right? M. And what did I say? I wanted ready for 3. Okay. And now this is where I do get push. Cool. Okay. So that's what you needed to do. And just to go over this content, I actually think I'm going to stop this video here and do a video just covering the challenge. That way it's not too long, and if something here, I can modify that. All right, move on to the next one. And by the way, there's nothing for this part you need to submit as part of my grading, and you'll see this in the graded part. I will make sure you have that set up and that you've changed that reference.